So this was the first show we ever did, and the point was to take sounds, take interviews, take public domain stuff, and see if I could reinterpret, remix it. Obviously, I didn't ask for permission, but I credited people in the sense that this, what you're going to hear right now, is if it comes up, if I'm not mistaken, but it should be coming up. It's basically this woman by the name of Rosa Parks. Does anyone know who Rosa Parks is?
Yes.
Right? So you see, so this is what I'm saying. So it's Rosa Parks is the furthest thing that you would expect. If I said, okay, one person associated with electronic music, not Rosa Parks, definitely. Taken. So I just want you guys to take a listen to this for a second. Okay.
I left work on my way home December 1st, 1955, about 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I boarded the bus downtown in Montgomery on Coach Square. As the bus proceeded out of town, on the third stop, the white passengers had filled the front of the bus. When I got on the bus, the rear was filled with colored passengers, and they were beginning to stand. The seat I occupied was the first of the seats where Negro passengers take as they on this route. The driver noted that the front of the bus was filled with white passengers, and there would be 2 or 3 men standing. He looked back and asked that the seat where I had taken, along with 3 other persons, one in the seat with me and 2 across the aisle, was seated. He demanded the seat that we were occupying. The other passengers very reluctantly gave up their seats, but I refused to do so. He then called the officers of the law. They came and placed me under arrest, and I was bailed out shortly after the arrest. And the trial was held December 5th on the next Monday, and the protest began from that day, and it is still continuing.
Well, Mrs. Parks, what in the world ever made you decide to be the person who, after all these years of Jim Crow and segregation, what made you at that particular moment decide you were going to keep that seat?
I felt that I was not being treated right, and that I had a right to retain the seat that I had taken as a passenger on the bus.
But Mrs. Parks, you had been mistreated for many, many, many years. You've lived most of your life in Montgomery, Alabama. What made you decide at the first part of the month of December 1955 that you had had enough?
The time had just come when I had been pushed as far as I could stand to be pushed, I suppose.
Mrs. Parks, had you planned this?
No, I hadn't.
It just happened?
Yes, it did.
Well, had there been many times before in your life when you thought that maybe you were going to do just that kind of thing?
I hadn't thought that I would be the person to do this. It hadn't occurred to me.
But don't you suppose you and many others also thought one time or another you were going to do this thing sooner or later?
Well, we didn't know just what to expect. In our area, we always try to avoid trouble and be as careful as possible to stay out of trouble and along this line.
What you've been listening to in the background is an interview of a woman by the name of Rosa Parks, who pretty much started a lot of the civil rights movement in the United States for colored people. Now, Rosa Parks was an African American woman who was forced to give up her seat, even though she was already sitting in the segregated section of the bus, as she was mentioning in the interview. I find this interview very. I find this whole track that she was recording with this interview very interesting because it's if you listen to what she was talking about, it was a lot of there's a lot of stuff concerning repression and not knowing whether you're going to be the one to bring change, but she did inadvertently. And I feel like if you've been watching TV and following the news lately, that's a lot of what's going on these days in other parts of the world. What I also need to do is credit a radio station by the name of Pacifica Radio. Pacifica Radio is a very, very left-wing free speech radio station based in the Bay Area of the United States. They've got this wonderful archive of all these recordings and interviews they've done, just like this one. And there's just this vintage feel to it that I just love. There was Rosa Parks, and then there was this very baritone voice of the interviewer, and it's just fantastic. Like someone like a station like Pacifica has done this, and they're really an institution. They're not just a radio station.